Okay, good morning, everyone. So bright and early, the 19th of April. Today it is Tuesday. So we are looking at the euro dollar, the euro pound, and the dollar index as well. Just a quick reminder for all Traders Club members, being Tuesday, we do have our Tuesday night session tonight, 8 p.m. GMT plus 8. So I think that markets have been quite quiet over the last couple of days from Friday all the way to now because of the Good Friday and Easter break. So I think we're going to see the liquidity and the volatility come back into play. We were just having a talk about this, the yen pairs climbing across the board this morning, but right now retracing slightly. So if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you check out the links below, join the club, get on board so that you can join this session live. This is uploaded onto YouTube at a later hour, just so that club members get this first. With that said, let's get started. Quick disclaimer, any information shared in this video is not intended to be a trade recommendation. It is solely the opinion and views and trade ideas of myself. So please remember to do your own analysis prior to entering any trades. So jumping straight into it, looking at the news this morning or today, right here on Forex Factory, 4 a.m. this morning, we had the Bank of New Zealand, Reserve Bank of New Zealand Governor Orr speaking. I'll tell you more about what he said at 4 a.m. We just had, just 9:30 a.m. we had the RBA with their policy meeting minutes release as well. We had a lot of news coming from the Bank of Japan, rather the finance minister commenting, and I've shared this on the club platform as well, that the main line was that a weaker yen is actually bad for the Japanese economy, has disadvantages. So, for some reason, despite the Minister of Finance saying that we saw the yen shoot towards the upside, this is totally in reverse to what the Kuroda said, where he said a weaker yen was actually good for the Japanese economy. So that brought that volatility back to the yen pairs across the board this morning. All right, so first off, let's look at a quick review. RBNZ Governor Orr speaking. Just, he said a lot of things there during the conference in what was it? Well, in Washington, he had this conference. But the main thing to pay attention to was what he said, that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand expects to keep raising rates in coming quarters as it seeks to contain inflation expectations, right? So that's actually quite a good thing coming from the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, expecting to keep increasing rates. And the line there, that last week's decision was about the pace of rate hikes rather than a signal that the end of the tightening will be higher. So, they're giving an indication, Reserve Bank of New Zealand giving an indication that they're going to be aggressive with this tightening, right? Reasonably aggressive with this monetary tightening. That 50 basis point increase they did last week was not likely to be a once-off. It's possibly going to be something that we're going to see them take an action they're going to take quite frequently, possibly, to keep inflation in check, right? So the main highlight here is always about inflation. At this point, inflation in New Zealand, 3-decade high, 5.9% in the fourth quarter, and this week showing a 7.1% the first 3 months of 2022. So, at 7.1%, we're going to see the Reserve Bank of New Zealand take on that approach. Very likely to see them take on that approach with more aggressive rate hikes and rate increases. Then coming back to it, 9:30 we had the Reserve Bank of Australia with their monetary policy meeting minutes, right? I went through the minutes. It's quite a long and lengthy document there. The two main things to pay attention to is that they attributed a lot of the current inflation due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? And then after that, domestically, they say they're doing quite well. The main thing to pay attention to here is that at the end, inflation in Australia had increased but was still lower than many other countries. That's the reason why, one reason why the Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, did not increase rates at their last meeting. They kept it at 0.1%, but members note that for some time the board had to be communicating to see evidence sustainably for inflation to be within the 2 to 3% target right here before increasing rates. Sustainably within the 2 to 3% target before increasing rates, right? And it was likely to require a faster rate of wage growth. So now we're looking at not just inflation, but also wage growth. And then the next line here, inflation had picked up and further increase was expected, with measures of underlying inflation in the March quarter expected to be above that 3%. These developments have brought forward a likely timing of the first increase in interest rates, right? So straight away, we're talking about they didn't do any increase. They kept cash rate at 10 basis points, but with the expectation that the March quarter inflation is going to be above 3%, likely to bring forward the timing of the first rate increase and paying attention to the wage growth. Hey, it looks like we're going to see the RBA take action towards increasing rates sooner rather than later. So this is actually quite an interesting approach coming from the RBA, a little bit less aggressive than the New Zealand or other countries, but we're looking like, or it's looking like they're going to be increasing rates sooner rather than later. So almost every central bank is increasing rates, only now waiting for the ECB and the Bank of Japan. Bank of Japan is very unlikely to increase rates. Right now, it's only the ECB looking to increase rates and the RBA right now. So pay attention to these two pairs in particular. With that said, let's look at how the dollar has been performing. The dollar index yesterday, it was sitting at this 100.5 or almost 100.55 level, saying that it will come up to test that 101 level. It's been climbing, it's coming up towards that point. The view stays the same. I anticipate the dollar index to continue climbing towards this 101 level. Right now it is at 100.79 or almost 100.80, looking for that move towards 101. So that dollar strength to continue. If that dollar strength does continue, what can we look out for? We spoke about the Aussie dollar tracking lower, the Kiwi dollar tracking lower, all that still holds from yesterday. Today, looking at the euro dollar at this point right now, the last we spoke about this during the ECB with our club members, if you were there, during the news, we said first trade, this was on the H1 time frame, just doing a quick recap. First trade, we were looking at the press conference to trade down towards that 108.41 level. Then the second trade was for it to break below that point and trade it down towards that 107.90 level. So it did that. It came as low as 1.0771 before bouncing back up again, back towards that resistance. And then it sat across for a couple of days because we saw that quiet period from Good Friday all the way to Monday. At this point right now, what to look out for on the euro dollar H4 time frame? I like that it's broken and stayed below this 1.0790 level. It looks like it's tracking lower, but bear in mind this next support at 107.45 was way back then, right? I had to go to the daily time frame, zoom all the way out just to show you that this low point was back in April 2020 and also in March 2020 that we saw it hit and bounced all the way back up. hit this level, track lower. This was during the pandemic, and then bounce back up again. So just be very careful when you're looking at the euro dollar to sell down on the H4 time frame now. I would say that, let me just zoom in, set it up nicely for you. I would say that if you're looking to sell down, this will be quite a tricky trade, because at this point to sell down, the stop loss of 20, 30 pips, your take profit will be very tight at only about 20 pips. What I would say is that on the euro dollar, look to possibly do this on a slightly longer time frame. Look for that 30 pip stop loss and that 60 to 70 pip take profit level testing lower, testing that 1.0693 support level. So this will be a bit of a medium to longer term trade. Medium to longer term trade, I would say look to sell below 1.0766 or 1.0765. You'd have a 30 pip stop loss above that 1.0790 resistance level. Take profit level, I'll stretch it lower towards that 1.0693 at about 70 pips. You'll be looking at a 1:2 risk reward ratio towards the downside on the euro dollar for the H4 time frame. With that said, looking at the euro pound, I'll tell you why I think the euro pound possibly no trades there, because as we look at the euro dollar coming down, I'll come back to the news again. What news do we have for the euro dollar? Not much for this week, right? So it's all about the US dollar strength. For today, no euro dollar news. Tomorrow on Wednesday, we have the CAD CPI numbers. So tonight, I'll tell you about the CAD numbers again. New Zealand CAD number, New Zealand CPI numbers. President Lagarde speaking at the Washington DC conference, possibly not going to do too much. The only news we have for the euro dollar is the German PMI numbers, manufacturing and services PMI numbers, but not looking like a big change, looking at some drop, but not a big change there. And then not a lot of news for the Eurozone. So that's one reason why I think that we're going to see, we're going to see the dollar strengthen. We're going to see the dollar strengthen, pushing the euro dollar down. But it's not so much about the euro getting weak, but more the dollar getting stronger. So as the dollar gets stronger, we're going to see the euro dollar push lower. We're going to see the pound dollar possibly push lower as well. And because of that, with the euro pound, we're possibly going to see this sit across. As the euro dollar comes down, it might push it down, but with the pound dollar possibly dropping, it's going to sit in that range. Not a great trading opportunity for the euro pound at this point. I'll tell you more about my projections on the pound dollar tomorrow when we look at pound and do a quick recap of the euro pound again. So, in the meantime, look at the euro dollar, look at the yen pairs, and Traders Club members, we will see you tonight for the club session. I'm sure we'll be looking at more yen pairs to trade and also preparing you for the CAD with the news to be released tomorrow. With that, take care, trade safe, trade well. See you again. Bye-bye.